Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. I would like to first thank the Women's Civic Forum for having me. And I would also like to really emphasize the role that Melanie Nichols played, because without her, this story would not be here today. She had the vision, she had the clarity of thought to see that the tower was illegal. And when she was attacked by the city administrator, she had the tenacity and the guts to stick with her program, even though everybody was against her in the city. And so Melanie Nichols is really the hero of this story. Okay? Without her, my job was quite easy compared to what she did, and Bill and Art. Now, this radio tower is symptomatic of much larger problems, not only in the city, but in this country. And if I could be political for a minute, is to say, it doesn't matter whether you're a Democratic governor in California with ties to the oil and gas industry to allow a gigantic BP spill of methane gas into the atmosphere. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican governor in Michigan that decides to poison 100,000 poor people in Flint, Michigan. Now, the problems in Pensacola are of a different scale and magnitude. But the general idea is that the political elites of both parties in various forums do not care. They do what they want to do, and they are not accountable, or they don't want to be accountable to the civic forums of this country. Now, we also have to thank one other person, and Mayor Ashton and Gene Church can thank Bill Olson, who's the city administrator, because he went after Melanie Nichols thinking he was going to take care of the little woman. He found out she's a lot tougher character than he made her out to be. So they can then thank Bill Olson.
Eric Olson.
Oh, Eric Olson, sorry. Okay, next slide. All right. Now, when we did the briefing, it was an hour-long briefing, so I'm going to run through it really quickly. But what I am going to tell you is that this is not opinion. We did a Freedom of Information Act. We got the Federal Aviation Administration documents. Everything that Gene Church swore to be true, we got. We scoured the Federal Communications database, and we got all the submissions from various radio stations, including what's his name? Gene Church. Gene Church's sworn to be true statements. So this is not opinion. This is fact. This is what he swore to be true. We're going to show you that the tower is illegal and unsafe, and we're going to show you that what has to happen is this tower has to come out. Everything has to be taken out. This pond has to be dredged and expanded and get 2.3 billion gallons at least, if not more. Next slide. Okay, some of this has already been covered. Recognize that a mayor, a city administrator at the time, a city attorney, and assistant city attorney completely ignored, disregarded their oaths of office and the law. Knowingly did this. The tower is in a conservation district. It's supposed to prevent flooding. There's not supposed to be a communication tower in there. If you have a non-conforming structure, that is something that's not supposed to be where it's not supposed to be, you can maintain it, you can fix it. You cannot make it bigger, taller, wider, in any way, shape, or form, because the law says the city wants to get rid of these non-conforming structures. They're not supposed to be there forever. The city attorney, two city attorneys turned their blind eye to this law, and the current city attorney wrote an opinion that would not pass first-year law school. The city council cannot authorize a tower in the in a conservation district. The zoning board cannot offer a variance for a communication tower in a district. And if you were going to put something into a conservation district, as Melanie said, some kind of bike trail, some kind of boat dock, there's a process for this. And the process is, the city council, actually what happens is you propose something, you give 9 copies to the city, they study it 30 days, they give it to the city council takes a look at it, there's a public meeting, everybody gets to say what they want, and the city mayor basically ignored this law. And finally, going back to 2002, the city of Pensacola has had a law on the books about what you do with city-owned property. And when the mayor took office, January 2011, the city council reaffirmed this law, this policy, and said if you want to sell city property or lease city property, identify it, tell us about it, we'll approve whether it should be a sale or lease. It opens up to bidding, and the public gets to have a say in the whole process. And so this city government, this mayor, the city administrator, the city attorneys have completely ignored the law and the process and the public. Next slide. Now, this is not based on opinion. This is based on the fact that we have all the FAA, FCC, and most of the city documents, including the first one's based on an email that Gene Church personally sent to a woman in the mayor's office, Elizabeth Buswell. And he indicated that as early as October 2011, 7 months before the mayor officially deigned to tell the city council that he wanted to do a lease, he was already secretly negotiating the sale of the property with the mayor. We do not know how far in advance of October 2011 this was, but we do know that Gene Church made an illegal political contribution to the mayor's campaign, and so these negotiations might extend even further back in time. We also know, based on the FAA and FCC documents, that from the very beginning, from the initial document that he submitted to the FAA, he lied. He deliberately misled the FAA into believing that a 250-foot tower was going to become a 400-foot tower, which is why they only think that tower still exists that was built in 1950, according to FCC records. He deliberately misled the FAA and then the FCC. And the reason why he misled them, we believe, is because if you build a new tower, federal law requires that you comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, which means you have to go get a very expensive, very extensive environmental assessment. And the requirement is that you must have extensive public hearings. And so to save himself hundreds of thousands of dollars, and to save him the embarrassment of the citizenry of Pensacola turning it down, he lied to the FAA and the FCC. In this October 2011 email, he knew that his old tower, that 250 tower that the city owned, was a non-conforming structure. And he knew, and he told the city, yes, I know it can be maintained, but you know what, I really do want to have something bigger, so I need a zoning variance. And then he turned around and lied to the FCC, telling them, oh yeah, I do have a zoning variance for a 400-foot tower. That never happened. Knowing that he was going to build a 400-foot tower, because that's what the FAA told him he could do, he then gets a professional engineer in Oklahoma and has this professional engineer design a 350-foot tower. He submits these drawings for a 350-foot tower twice to the city, and twice the city approves plans for a 350-foot tower. But Gene Church, ever the enterprising one, decides to illegally build the tower, because he doesn't really tell, or at least we believe he didn't really tell, his contractor that he was building the tower. He illegally puts in the foundations, 4 foundations, he erects the tower, he blows up his old tower. As soon as that old tower gets blown up, grandfather clause is out, you can't do anything. He's told in February by the Department of Planning, you must remove all these 4 foundations. The tower must come down. Bill Weeks stands in front of the city council and says, yeah, the tower has to come down. The foundations have to come out. Guess what? They never came out. They never did anything. What they did do is make some modifications from the same professional engineer for a 350-foot tower. Professional engineer has no idea that he is really making modifications for a 400-foot tower in a stormwater pond. Nobody apparently has ever told him that. So he builds a 400-foot tower with no engineering design from a professional engineer, with no city approval, and it's there as an illegal and unsafe tower. And surprisingly, the city is so accommodating to Gene Church that in August of 2015, they certified that the tower is perfectly okay, even though they never bothered to even measure the tower. They didn't even bother to use a tape measure to figure out if it's a 350-foot tower or a 400-foot tower. And lastly, in the lease, he's supposed to carry $1 million worth of insurance, and for 16 months, while he was building this illegal tower, he carried no insurance. So if anybody had been killed or their property had been damaged, the city was going to pay for it. Now, that's not my opinion. That's Bill Weeks in a letter to Gene Church saying, if the foundations fail, it's going to kill somebody. That's not my opinion. Now, Bill Kaplan just spent weeks measuring this tower. And on the right, you see the tower that Leo Roberts from Oklahoma, the professional engineer, designed. 350-foot, 6 guy wires going out 210 feet. So you have one foundation under the tower and 3 anchor foundations to the right-hand side. That's what was designed, that's what's approved. On the left is what was built. 400 feet. The guy wires don't match up. There's no specification that still going out 210 feet from the tower makes it safe. There's still no calculations to conform to the Florida Building Code that the foundations that are in the ground for a 400-foot tower actually are up to specification. This tower is illegal, it's unsafe, and it's based on documentation. It's not an opinion. All that has to happen is the city council has to act. Next slide. So what we believe is that the mayor, his city administrator, his city attorneys have deliberately misled the city council. They've withheld documents from them, they have withheld information, and they have acted not in a very transparent manner. The strong mayor model itself is seriously flawed. What we have found out, this is only the tip of the iceberg. As we began looking at the Department of Planning and the Department of Inspections, I won't say that they're corrupt. I am not saying that. But what I am saying is that the system, the way they have designed it, has no transparency, no accountability. And so we believe that the tower has to come down because the lease should be canceled. Structures should come out. The 24,000 foot of cable, copper cable under the ground should come out. And it should be dredged and expanded. And the floodwater pond would include about 2.3 billion gallons of water. And now you'll hear a number of times, they'll trot out the vice president of Atkins Engineering. He's a very bright guy. But let me tell you something about government contractors. They will study what you ask them to study. They will use the assumptions you give them. You give them assumptions that say, don't look at the tower, and they will tell you, oh, the tower's insignificant. You tell them, oh, what happens if the tower's gone and you dig down 8 feet, 10 feet, and expand it out 6 acres? How much water do you think you could put in the pond? That's a different question. And they have never asked the question, and they have never gotten an answer for the question, because the city doesn't want you to know how much water can be put in that pond. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Questions? Okay. CJ?
James, the last slide you said cancel lease. Is it your opinion, based on talking with attorneys, that the lease is null and void?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, couldn't the city council make a determination if the lease is null and void, at which point then they would have to kind of unravel everything?
Rick Outzen hired a lawyer who looked at the law, and the opinion was the city could not even enter into that lease. And so they could cancel the lease, all that. But even if one assumed that the lease was valid, which it's not, but even if you assumed it is, Gene Church has violated the lease a number of times, including not giving the documents that have been requested. And so the council could, in fact, break the lease and just say, you know, you violated it.
We have a woman right here with a white shirt and the glasses.
Thank you. Melanie, it's just such an honor to be here today. I wish there were 300 more people like you who were determined and involved to do things like we all need to do. I spent 4 years trying to get the kids moved out of Brown Barge and the school closed, and it was just as you're saying, they tried to tell you you're crazy and whatever else. But a couple of questions. First of all, is Long Hollow part of North Hill?
North Hill weaves in and out of Long Hollow.
Okay.
When they came out to put our North Hill on the National Register, they recognized all the way to Tarragona Street for North Hill. But it had to go up for a referendum, and to get 60% buy-in from the public to put that on themselves, they had to have 60% people buy in and vote yes. There were a lot of people, because at that time in the 70s, there were a lot, and there still are, a lot of people of moderate means in that neighborhood who did not feel that they could meet those ARB, architectural review board requirements. So they voted not to be in it. But it is recognized by Washington, D.C. as historic. But yes, the North Hill weaves in and out of that area. And we are also in that 1,025 acres that this stormwater pond serves.
Okay, 2 questions